So let's just run through this real quick. If you guys have any questions about time value of money, you guys can look it up. So then a company issues 5-year zero interest bearing bond, 5-year zero interest. So if it's anything, if this note is not a current asset, as in like it's not less than a year, if it's over a year, pretty much it's gonna be related to the present value of the principal. It's gonna be recorded at the present value. Okay, so they're asking, so it's 5-year bond at 4%. So the present value is 20,548. Equipment is exchanged for a non-interest bearing note. This note is going to be paid, it's going to be collected in 1 year at 20,000. So because of that, regardless of what the present value is, it's going to be recorded at the future value of 20,000. Company A sells land to Company B. Company A takes a note from Company B due in 2 years, 5% interest. So the applied annual interest 100,000. The present value of the note is $90,730, so that's going to be an answer. That's going to be what it's recorded at. Sells a parcel of land. The term of the note requires to make a single payment 2 years. Present value is $495 and $870. Okay. Performs services for a customer exchange for non-interest bearing. 3 years, the present value is $86,384. So that's going to be what's recorded at the present value. 2 years, so then it's going to be recorded at the present value of 10,000. Savings account, regardless of whatever it is, if it's under a year, it's going to be recorded at the present value. So they would need to deposit $7,843. Collects rent of $1,500. They invest the rent money. The present value of the rent is $1,442. What is discount value of the rent? The discount value is $1,442. $1 million, 10 years, 8% interest. Present value $463,190. Okay, recorded at present value. Savings account 5% interest compound annually 4 years after depositing that principal. The account contains exactly $5,000. Assuming, what is the present value of the savings? 4,114. Present value. Needs to have 470,000 cash at the end of 4 years. 4 years at 6%. Present value is $55,446. So that's going to be what is going to be recorded. And then, like, what needs to be deposited? A company received $10,000 at the beginning of each year under a subscription. So at the beginning of each year, so January 1st for the next 3 years under subscription contract. So the ordinary annuity is the present value of the ordinary annuity 626,730. Present value of the annuity due. So the thing is, annuity due are payments made at the beginning of the year. The ordinary annuity is going to be the payments made at the end of the year. So if they collect the payment at the beginning of the year, that payment or that money will grow over the course of the month till the next month. So then the annuity due is going to be more than the ordinary annuity. So at the beginning of the year, so that's going to be annuity due 28334. Company leasing machine for 10 years, annual payment $5,000. Assuming the 5% annual interest rate is appropriate. Present value of 1, present value of the annuity. So it's going to be made at the beginning of the year, so it's annuity due $40,539. Company agrees to pay Company B $100,000 at the beginning of each year, so that means it's going to be annuity due. So they'll record 288609. Company receives payment of $10,000 for next 3 years. Subscription model. payments will be made at the end of the first year. So they'll be making payments like December 31st. So that's going to be our ordinary annuity 27233. Company will receive 10,000 each year at the next 5 years, start at the end of the first year, December 30th. So that means it's ordinary annuity. So the answer is $44,518. Company leasing machine for 10 years, and the annual payment of 5,000 at the end of the year. So that means that it's going to be the ordinary annuity. The answer is $38,609. Company will receive 10,000 each year at the blah blah. At the end of the first year, December 31st, so ordinary annuity $44,518. Individual recently won the lottery has the opportunity to receive 100,000 each year at the end of the year. At the end of the year, so ordinary annuity $1,409,394. That's the present value of the ordinary annuity. A company receives payment on note receivable at the end of the year, 10 years. Present value of that ordinary annuity 7722. Company receives payment on note receivable at the beginning of every year for 10 years. So this is annuity due, so $8,108. At the end of each year, the next 5 years, end of each year, so that means it's ordinary annuity. Ordinary annuity of present value is $44,518. Students save $40,000, take a year to study abroad. Cash was deposited, money market account. Wants to withdraw equal amounts each month at the end of the month. So that would be an ordinary annuity. The ordinary annuity value is $3,782.38. So an investment of $1 for 8 years at 8% annual interest is compounded annually. So they have an 8% annual interest, and there's 4 compounding periods. So that means that each compounding period, because it's quarterly, there's 4 compounding periods of 8%. So then each compounding period is 2%. What is interest rate per? So 2% is compounding interest rate per period. Investment of 1% for 12 years at 12% annual interest is compounded monthly. So there's 12 compounding periods at 12% annual interest. So that means that every month the interest rate per compounding period is 1%. Investment of $1 for 8 years at 10% annual interest compounds annually. As a 10% annual interest compound is, what is compounding rate? It's 5%. An investment of $1 for 8 years at 8% annual interest compounded quarterly. What is the interest rate and period per compounding period? So there are 4 quarters, and the annual interest rate is 8%. So that means that each compounding quarter is going to be 2%. But there's 8 years, so then there's going to be 32 periods at 2%. On June 1st, company sold some equipment, entered into an installment sales contract, 8%. The contract requires equal payments each quarter for 4 years, with the first payment due on June 1st. What's the compound interest appropriate for this situation? So it's quarterly, and the annual interest rate is 8%. So each quarter is going to be 2% interest. 4 quarters, 4 years, 16 periods at 2%. Each quarter due on June 1st. So then that's going to be an annuity due. Payments made at the beginning of the month. So company deposits 10,000 in a bank where it earns simple interest of 10%. Let's do some really quick problems. 10% interest, simple interest annually. So year 1. Well, the principal deposit is 10,000. What is it? Annual interest rate, simple interest of 10%. So that means in year 1, the interest interest payment will be 1,000. 10,000 times 10%. The principal will not change. It will remain 100,000, 10,000. Year 2, so it'll be 1,000. Company deposits 25,000 in the savings account. Will earn 6% interest annually. What's the amount of interest at the end of 2 years? 25,000 times 6%, 1,500. The total amount of interest at the end of 2 years, right? So the 2 years, it earns 1,500. Each year is 3,000. The individual deposits 50,000 at bank where it earns simple interest of 10%. What is the balance in the savings account at the end of 5 years? Okay. So it doesn't compound, but it does earn interest. So 50,000 times 10%, 5,000 per year, 5 years, 25,000 plus the original principal, 50,000, 75,000. A company deposits 10,000 in a bank where it earns simple interest 10%. What's the value of the savings account in 2 years? So 10,000 times 10% times 2 years plus the original principal, so 12,000. Company deposits 10,000 where it earns compounded interest 10% annually. So the original principal deposit 10,000, annual compounding interest 10%. Year 1, 1,000, and now the principal is 11,000. So in year 2, 11,000 times 10%. The second year, because of compounding interest, it's going to be 11,100, and the principal will be 1,100. Okay. Company is putting together a list of transactions that are affected by the time value of money. What transactions should be included in the list? So a list of transactions that are affected by the time value of money. Current note receivables. If it's current, it's less than a year, so most likely it won't be affected by the time value of money. They'll just record it at the present value or at the future value, or the value that the note was written at. Investments in active markets. Possibly long-term leases, short-term leases. Anything that's short-term won't necessarily be affected by time value of money. Investments in active markets, that's not really as sure, because it's not going to give you like a return, a percentage, because it's not definite. It's not a note or like any type of thing that you borrow will give you a sort of like a fixed return that's going to be almost guaranteed year after year. So that's why for investments, it's not going to be like, you can sort of calculate the future value of that, but it's going to be sort of not as clear versus like a long-term lease. Like when you guys take out a long-term lease, you guys have like almost like a fixed, or it could be varied, but then you could still kind of calculate the future value of that, sort of based off of like the range of the interest rate if it is varied. Which of the following situations does not base an accounting measure on present value? Pensions, prepaid insurance, leases, sinking funds. Pensions do have a present value because pensions have an interest rate that, well, a lot of times pensions are like invested in the stock market, but so like it could necessarily have a present value and a future value. Leases definitely have a present value, future value. Anything related to funds that are invested have interest rate well, if it's, for example, non-interest or a zero interest bearing note, still they do have like a future value and a present value. Prepaid insurance, on the other hand, is more like a asset that you pay ahead of time. It's not really like something that necessarily has a present value. It's just like a value that doesn't really change over time. Which category involves present value transactions that must be evaluated based on the time value of money? Present value category transactions. So equity, present value based on. So equity doesn't necessarily have a return or interest rate. So not necessarily cash doesn't have interest rate. Goodwill doesn't have interest rate. Post-retirement benefits, on the other hand, do. A company buys another company. Which present value accounting measure is associated with this transaction? Stock-based compensation. Disclosure. Long-term asset. That's for sure. Long-term asset. I would say it's long-term asset, but apparently all of those answers are correct. So that's pretty much the gist of time value of money. Most of it is related to, for example, how to record these, whether or not it's zero interest bearing or non-interest bearing. Doesn't matter whether it's a note that is exchanged for a asset. For example, they buy land with a note. Whether or not it's like that or not, doesn't matter, as long as if it's a current asset, if it's as in the note is less than a year, is the only reason why it would be written or recorded at the future value. Otherwise, it's going to be recorded at the future value, as well as things related to annuity too. Ordinary annuity. Ordinary annuity is payments received on that note. Payments made at the end of the year, that's ordinary annuity, and then annuity due is going to be payments received at the first of the month. At the first of the month, if they receive that payment, then it has a whole month before the next payment period for that payment to grow. So that way, the annuity due is going to be more than the ordinary annuity. Simple interest and compound interest. But that's pretty much the gist of it. Time value of money, as well as like understanding like if there is like an annual interest rate, then how do you determine whether when it's getting compounded semi-annually, quarterly, or monthly, you can determine the interest rate based off that annual interest rate for the period. And then you can determine how many total compounding periods there are for the entire length of the note.